Hello and welcome to my Autism Ally podcast, where we come together to share helpful information about autism.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our training about Indiana Medicaid waiver programs. I'm Susan Crowell, and I'm here with
Samantha Drudge.
And we're going to chat about the Medicaid waiver program here in the state of Indiana. And a lot of people get really overwhelmed sometimes with this process, but we're here to make it much simpler for you and to break it down into small steps so that you better understand the resources that your child that's just been diagnosed with autism is eligible for. So, first question is, what is the Medicaid waiver? This program was created in 1981 to replace state institutional care. Some of you who may have lived in the Fort Wayne area may remember the developmental center that was out on the northeast side of town, closer to PFW now. So this system was built to start replacing that institutionalized care. It provides home and community-based services. It's supposed to be support for the caregiver as well as support for the participant throughout their lifespan. There are two waivers, but we're going to focus in particular on one today called the Family Supports Waiver and the Community Integration and Habilitation Waiver. So again, we're going to talk mostly about the Family Supports Waiver. Sometimes it's referred to as the FSW waiver or the BEADS. That's like BDDS waiver. There's a lot of different acronyms and stuff. So hopefully we'll make that simpler and more easy for you to understand. But the most important thing that I want you to take from this is that even though we call it the Medicaid waiver, in this instance, Medicaid is referring to where the funding is coming from within the state of Indiana. The waiver is based on the individual having a disability. Your assets and income as a caregiver parent are not taken into consideration in order to qualify. So you could be a millionaire in the state of Indiana, and if your child has been diagnosed with autism, your child would be able to qualify for this program. So don't let the word Medicaid discourage you from qualifying. That is probably by far the number one misconception. People hear that word Medicaid and they think, well, we don't qualify. We don't even need to bother going any further. And like I said, these are lifelong supports for the individual with autism. So think about the types of supports they need after you die. These things are still going to be in place. That's why it's important to apply. What is this waiver and how is it going to help my child? So the first part I want to talk about is that these are direct, one-on-one. We're working on developmental deficits. So it's going to be not a group setting like you would see like in maybe a school or different types of therapy settings. This is direct care, one-on-one to work on those deficits. It's going to expand their opportunities for growth and social community integrations opportunities. And the whole idea about this waiver is so that we can create a team of professionals to support both the participant and the caregiver. So hence why we call it the Family Support Waiver. Yes, we're giving direct supports to the individual by autism, but truly this is something that's going to benefit the whole family. So how do I get started in this process of applying for the Medicaid waiver? So the first thing is that we need a diagnosis by a qualified medical professional prior to the age of 22. So this is a diagnosis not from your general practitioner. This is going to be a very in-depth diagnostic assessment that is being done on your loved one. And if you don't know how to obtain that assessment, contact us here at My Autism Ally. We've got lots of options available for you throughout the state that you can choose from. In this instance, We know that schools do their own educational evaluations to order to qualify students for special education services. And educational evaluation is not a diagnosis. It's not a substitute in this case. We're going to need to obtain and complete the application through the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services. And then we're also going to demonstrate need determined by level of care. And we're going to talk about level of care here in the next few minutes. But there are paper applications you can obtain through the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services, but there's also an online option, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. Feel free to contact us at My Autism Ally. We will include these links in the show notes so that you have links that you can click and directly go to. But here in District 3, the office is on Rudisill in Fort Wayne. But you can see that the state is broken up into a variety of districts, and you're just going to want to go to the district office that is that your county is in. Again, we'll fill this link in the show notes as well. There is an online option as well. It's very easy. It's not difficult. There will be a confirmation of diagnosis paperwork that you'll need to have sent in with both of these application options. But again, these things aren't meant to be difficult. But if at any point in the process you get overwhelmed or you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us here at My Autism Ally. We would be happy to help. We help families with this process all the time.
Definitely.
So yeah. I would say a very large percentage of our phone calls are about how do I apply for waiver? I have the waiver and I'm having questions about different types of services or things like that. We deal with this a lot, don't we, Sam?
We do.
So the next thing I want to talk about is level of care, because this is how BEADS is identifying whether or not your loved one on the autism spectrum qualifies for waiver services. So the thing I want to focus on first is that it's important for whoever is filling out the paperwork to fill out the application honestly, but from a deficit point of view. So let's talk about what that means.
And I would say this is the hardest part for families to do.
Yes, it is.
Because it was for me. I'm sure, Susan, for you as well. Talking about your child in the negative is hard because we are their cheerleaders.
Yes, exactly. And that's the part of the mindset that is so difficult to change. We are so focused on celebrating those even small achievements that sometimes it's very difficult to step back and talk about the things our kids can't do.
I think also the biggest thing to think about, and I'm going to not pick on my own child amazingly, I normally do, but if your kid showers or takes a bath, but you have to initiate or you have to do things, they don't put on deodorant. You have to remind them or help them put it on. That's not independent care of themselves. That is something that you would want and need to write down as one of those deficits that they have. Because it is, go ahead.
And one of the things that I always find so ridiculous, because especially if you get the paper form, obviously we're trying to save space and we're trying to save trees. So there's literally a box that's like, I don't know, at maximum an inch tall and maybe about 6 inches wide that says, describe how disability affects your life. And I laugh every time I see that little box, because if I only had the amount of things that could fit in this box, I might not meet level of care.
Right. Exactly.
So feel free to write "see attached" in that box. Get a piece of paper, write it out in bullet points if you want. You can write it out as paragraphs as you want. but the key is to identify the things that make your child different. You're disclosing those behaviors that are not developmentally appropriate. And we know that this is going to look different for every child, and that it changes with age. Sam brought up some really good points about our middle schoolers and high school aged individuals. If you've got to remind them to take a shower, if you've got to remind them all the time to put on deodorant, those aren't necessarily doing those things independently. A lot of times I ask families of older individuals, if they're filling it out, I'm going to drop your kid off in the middle of downtown Chicago. What are the impairments of them being able to get back home?
Mm-hmm.
Do they understand stranger danger? Do they understand how to read, schedules and bus line to talk on the phone? That's the kind of clarity you need to be thinking about. So we do have some examples of deficits. And obviously, if you have littles, it's going to look different. They may have very limited speech or echolalia. Actually, that could be at any age. If they run away or run towards water, we call that elopement concerns. So those would definitely be things you would want to put down in this area. If they only eat foods with a certain texture or color, the chicken nuggets, macaroni, cheese crowd.
Oh, yeah.
We're addressing you here. If they don't dress or bathe themselves independently, they cannot independently toilet themselves. Whoops, Sam, what did you have?
I was going to say, just remember the whole step. It's not just one step of the bathing that they can do. That's fine, but you have to then say they're not doing it themselves. So,
exactly.
Initiating as well as doing, as well as all the steps in that process.
If you have a list of things, like I know families who have a laminated list, shower checklist, or a laminated bath checklist. That's great. That's a support, but they're not doing it independently. They still need a prompt. Mm-hmm. So those are the types of things that you would want to be taking into consideration there. If they hit, bite, or if they're violent with others in any way, that's something you're going to want to put down here. If they have a meltdown when things don't go their way, another good thing to add. Recognizing dangerous situations, acts inappropriately with strangers. That's not just a stranger danger thing. That can also be, instead of giving people handshakes, they run up and give people hugs. Mm-hmm. It's about appropriate interactions with people they don't know. Are they able to cook for themselves? Again, that's going to be maybe a slightly older individual. Household chores. Do they understand the concept of money? So those are just a few examples of deficits. Obviously, it's going to look different for every individual on the autism spectrum, and also the age of the individual when you're applying.
And I always put with the concept of money, I guess I want to also address, because this was an issue for us, is also someone said they needed $5, so I just gave them $5. It's not just the concept, it's also the understanding of what money is and how and why it's used and why we don't give it to strangers,
Yeah, no, you bring up a very good point. We know individuals that are older on the autism mm-hmm. spectrum and have had difficulty with this concept.
Yep.
And others have taken advantage of them in relationships because, hey man, I really need a new car. And the yep. individual gives them a bunch of money to help them out because they don't see that being inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's more than just, I understand that the dollar looks like a dollar or that I can identify money. It's about how to use money and how to spend it appropriately.
Exactly.
So obviously the next step, if you have the paper application, you're going to want to make a copy of all that stuff. It's just a good idea to have that on hand. That way, hey, sometimes things get lost in the mail or they get lost in the shuffle. Boy, it's easy on mm-hmm. you just to be able to make yourself another copy and send it off. Make sure that the portion that is being filled out by your physician, that you have that copy, that you get that back, that they don't just mail that directly to Beads. That way you have the complete application. Mail and submit the application again to the needs office where we referred you to that map. Again, we'll have that in the show notes as well. And BEADS will contact you within 30 days to set up some interview process, to acknowledge that they received the application. Make sure you put yourself a calendar reminder about this, because if you don't hear back from them, you need to reach out to them. Ask them where that application is. BEADS is very good about replying that we received your application and we will be in touch. So keep in mind that the intake interview that your loved one on the autism spectrum will be asked to attend. Again, this is kind of one of those good, things that we as taxpayers are going to want to check. It's not that they're evaluating your kid or anything like that. It's about, there's an individual in front of me who the doctors tell us have autism, and there's actually a real individual, and there's actually a real family that is seeking these real supports. It's one of those, checks that every good taxpayer in the state would want to make sure that is happening here. It's nothing awful. But that being said, they do ask questions about the application during that interview. And if you feel that your child would be harmed in any way by you discussing those negative aspects about him or her to that person, feel free to bring somebody else to the interview. They don't have to stay for the whole interview. They just have to be present so they can be seen. They don't have to be a part of that part of the process. So,
well, and I always like to tell families, so your kid doesn't sit still. Okay, they go to the meeting. They're going to see that your child doesn't sit still and is climbing over and parkouring over furniture. Though not that is at all them diagnosing, because they don't. But it is good that they're seeing those behaviors and seeing that firsthand.
Exactly. I remember my interview when I took my son. He was one of those kids. I literally became as big as I possibly could. We were in this cubicle thing. And I have got things off to the side of me. And I'm in the middle of the entrance and exit so that I could at least put out an arm and stop him. I do remember having to get up and chase after him at least once. So again, it's okay. And I didn't even know what I was doing at that point. I mean, that was a long time ago. But anyway, I can look back on that and laugh now, folks. At the time, probably wasn't. But anyway, this was part one of a two-part discussion about the Medicaid waiver program. So the next portion will be about you're getting the waiver, now what's going to happen. But thank you for joining us for this beginning portion of what is the Medicaid waiver. If you have any questions at all about this process, if you want to have a phone conversation or more questions we can answer by email, just reach out to us. We are glad to help.
This next segment, you may be an autism parent if. You may be an autism parent if you understand the difference between vegan, gluten-free, and casein-free diets.
My Autism Allies Autism Acceptance Walk returns to the Allen County Fairgrounds Sunday, September 11th from noon to 4. It's an afternoon of activities and resources for the whole family, including supports for those on the autism spectrum. Food trucks, a vendor fair, pony rides, face painting, sensory play, balloon artists, and much more. And it's all free to attend. The Autism Acceptance Walk at the Allen County Fairgrounds, September 11th from noon to 4. Visit myautismally.org for more info. Presented by Hot 1079.
With over 88 years in business and over 100 trucks on the road, Parker Towing and Recovery is available for any and all of your towing needs. From light to heavy duty towing, recovery work, hauling equipment, roll-offs, or regular roadside needs, Parker Towing and Recovery is here to keep Fort Wayne moving. Their dispatch center is open 24 hours a day to assist you. Give them a call at 260-485-5555 9014. Parker Towing and Recovering, keeping Fort Wayne hooked. Thanks for listening. Please stay connected with us on Facebook, Instagram, and sign up for our newsletter at myautismally.org. Talk with you next time at the My Autism Ally podcast.